Hello, and welcome to another fully live and slightly late episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinzie. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and I am back after a week-long trip to the San Juan Islands to visit Toorcap and teach a total of 5 separate cybersecurity workshops there. It was a pretty incredible experience, but it was a very long drive. And it turns out that if you are gone for a week, then a lot of people want to talk to you when you get back. So I am just getting back in the swing of things after catching up. And in the spirit of being very late with things, I also wanted to wish everyone a very happy Pride now that it's over. I brought my own Pride shirt today. So hopefully everyone enjoys that. And I got to catch Pride in Seattle on the way back. It was wonderful. There were many very friendly, awesome people there. And just wanted to say that since I completely forgot for the entire month. So hope you guys like my Pride shirt. I picked it out myself. Anyway, it was a really wonderful conference, and I'm going to go ahead and show some videos of what we did at Toorcap. There were some inspiring things, some cool things, and we ran a sticker exchange, for which the results were pretty incredible and cool. We got a lot of really great ones. So at Toorcap, there is definitely also the spirit of bartering. And in this case, we got to go ahead and take a box of slightly damaged like nuggets, our little open source hacker tools. And these slightly damaged nuggets, maybe they had cracked screens or something, were able to be pretty easily repaired. And we just had them for barter. Now at Toorcap, there's this thing called the night market. And at the night market, you basically barter and trade and use like fake currency called Shady Bucks to buy things. Now, we were selling a couple things for, like workshop materials, but also we had this box set aside for trades. And I want to show you some of the things that we accepted in trade at the conference for some of our lightly, we called them busted nuggets. So first off, we have, the kind of what you would expect, a little microcontroller. Like, that's fine. This is a Node MCU. Like, I'm cool with these. That was a pretty good trade. We also have this crazy one, which is a binary game. This is from Spark Fun. This one was pretty good. Let's see if I can turn it on. There we go. Comes with sound too. So this is a binary game. You have to figure out the correct number of buttons for bits that represent the binary version of that value. Fun little game, cute. And then that was a good trade. We had this one, my favorite by far. This is a light cube that a 12-year-old kid put together and traded us in exchange for a broken nugget, which he ended up fixing up. I think that this was my favorite thing that we got at the conference, just because it's obvious that it took a lot of time to do. It's just like very engaging. I think you'll probably end up finding it on the table behind me from now on, because I think it makes a pretty good prop for the rest of the set. So I think that was a really good trade. We also have this one. Let me see if I can plug this one in. So this is another electronics project. And what I really like about this one is that it's like perfectly diffused. So the panels here are like frosted acrylic. It really, really has like a nice like matrix there that diffuses the light just perfectly. So I felt like this was a pretty good trade for a broken nugget. Like, all in all, like, I really like this a lot. In fact, it also apparently reacts to sound. So you can put this into a mode where the pattern on the screen is representing the sound that's coming from the microphone. So as I talk, it seems like it actually reacts to the sound, which is cool. Anyway, I thought that was really cool. That was a great trade. Again, most of these were from like kids or other people who would like put these together themselves. And then we had a kid that just came up and gave us a seashell. And I was like, fine, it's a nice shell. I like it. We're like by the ocean, so I kind of feel like it's like, maybe not that hard to get one of those, but I'll take the seashell. So we also got, as I said, a number of incredible stickers. I was feeling pretty generous that night, and we gave out a lot of partially broken nuggets. And then by the end of the camp, most people had fixed theirs using the screens that we gave out. So it was really cool to see people take something that was to us just like, something that was broken. We didn't have time to fix it, adopt it, and give it new life. So our nugget adoption program was a tremendous success. We traded a lot of cool things for them, and I really enjoyed that part of the conference where we got to barter and trade with people. I thought it was really cool and fun. So we also brought our friend Angelina, who made another PCB. So during the camp, we hosted a Meow Mixer workshop, and this is the Meow Mixer. It's a classic. It lets beginners get started with soldering. It's really easy to make. It's very white and bright in this, but you can kind of see the eyes light up and you can change the color. So she decided to make another one, and this is a sneak peek. This is we didn't get to do it on the camp, but this is something we almost had ready. This is an airplane PCB that actually blinks the way that real airplanes need to for safety. And you can adjust the potentiometer on it to change the rate of blinking, which is pretty cool. So it uses a 555 timer. If you're an electronics nerd, then you probably know what that is. But for teaching basic circuits, this is a pretty cool board, especially considering that Angelina is a pilot and knows a lot about airplanes. So this is really cute. We're probably going to teach a workshop on this very soon. So if you're interested in airplanes and if you're interested in learning about 555 timers and electronics, this should be a lot of fun, although still a little bit of tweaking to be done. So let me go ahead and instead of just talking about it, let me show you guys some of what happened at C3. There's a lot of things that are that are pretty legendary from C3, or sorry, not C3, from Toorcap. But I would say the camp or the conference that it reminds me most of is Chaos Communication Congress, C3. A lot of the same people were there, and in my head, I'm already kind of mixing them up. So as the American outdoor version of C3, one of those legendary things is drone delivery. So they have drone taco delivery where you can call a number and they will actually send you a taco from a drone. This sparked all kinds of drama and ingenuity as hackers had to work together to free the drones from trees they'd become trapped in, usually with other drones or crackpot ideas that ended up actually working out. So let me show a little bit of what we had to do to prepare for the conference and what it was like. Because if you haven't been to Toorcap, it looks like evidence suggests it is usually every other year. So it's like every 2 years that it happens. So, you know, if you want to get started planning for it now, now's the time. So my strategy going into this was noodles and diffusers. I wanted to create a giant noodle that was diffused, that was beautiful. So I ordered these white pool noodles off of like walmart.com because you can't find them anywhere in stores. Like they just don't have white pool noodles. So these diffuse light perfectly. And my plan was to make a gigantic tower that would guide everyone around the camp, like a landmark that would let people navigate through an area that's maybe otherwise just a bunch of tents. So this was my vision for the Space Noodle. We also tried to pack up everything we needed, including power cables, and almost packed the cat a number of times. This was another idea. This is actually from BitLooney on YouTube. This is a 3D print that allows you to wrap NeoPixels around and actually put ping pong balls on the outside to create these really cool looking lamps. On the way there, this got completely melted because I printed it in black PLA+. So as a result, when I got to the conference, it was all misshapen and did not look so great. So RIP to this idea, but it was pretty cool. And you can actually make this out of paper as well. All right, so in order to get to the island, you have to go on a ferry. And being on the front of this ferry was incredibly cool. It was very beautiful. The islands are incredible. San Juan Island and the San Juan Islands in particular are just like really, really gorgeous, although quite rainy. So on the first day, we were attacked by these caterpillars, which would explode into goo if you touch them in any way. And they were crawling over everything and generally making themselves a nuisance. So these were by far the most prominent character of the entire camp. In order to get from part to part in camp, you would walk through these areas that were lit with these beautiful, like glowing, multicolored LEDs. So different parts of the camp were connected together in a way that made it super fun to walk between the active parts of the camp and find where people had set up. You can see our former co-host Michael here hunting for Sasquatch at the camp. He was here helping us direct classes. So if you wonder what Michael's been up to, well, he's been going also to camps with us and setting up all sorts of cool stuff. So we saw a lot of stuff there. This robot was one of my favorites. She was beautiful and she was often DJing or otherwise playing music. But she was great. I think she had like spoons for fingers or something. So I tried to mimic that vibe, and this was our tent. We had a geisha mask from Ghost in the Shell that was lit up internally. And then going inside, we had a space that was set up for people to come by, learn. And of course, everything was lit up with LEDs, which lasted not that long, actually, considering the power was going out constantly. So Millways was an organization that was there and was hosting dance and karaoke parties. And they had these cool chandeliers with all these nonsense IoT light bulbs in it, which I had to say were pretty funny. And I'm going to probably steal. And then we, at night, put up a shower curtain liner and projected patterns onto it. So the noodle you can see is here being diffused. So basically, this is a shot of the shower curtain with the projected patterns on it. And then the noodle, the space noodle, as I called it, kind of like emerging from behind and also diffusing on the back of this shower curtain. So we created a pretty cool display, I have to say. In the children's section, our good friend Michael did in fact put us right in the middle of like the kids camp kind of area. So we were mostly putting on these crazy displays for a bunch of children who really appreciated it, but continually interacted with things and sometimes broke them. Although they were very cute and we didn't mind. So this is what the space noodle looked like from the other side. You can just see it is a big, prominent noodle that towers over everything else. There were safety concerns over making this noodle any taller, but we got it to like at least 20 feet tall. So kudos to the noodle, of course. This is the main dome for Toorcap. This is where a lot of the workshops were happening. And as you can see, they were projecting onto it. They had like projection mapping going. So our whole shower curtain thing was nice, I guess. But when compared to a whole geodesic dome that also had like projections and graphics on it, it was not maybe as impressive. So more impressive was people just doing random stuff like this. So I got to see the emergence of some of the largest bubbles I've ever seen in my life. Have to say, it was pretty incredible. Question from James. Oops, I clicked on the wrong one. I'm going to highlight you, James. How do you manage powering all of your gear? So at Toorcap, there's no power guarantee. They do a best effort to run power, but it is sketchy, and we popped the breaker over and over and over. Neighbors were accusing each other of ground faults, and all other sorts of things were happening. Every time we plugged anything in, it ended up eventually causing either a short or somebody accusing it of causing a short. So all of our tents were connected on the same power grid, and we were the only ones that brought a power spike. So we were running the noodle, which I considered to be a public service for people navigating at night. But we were also running other things like this professional bubble machine I got for $10 at Goodwill. So as a result, like there was a good amount of cooperation. A lot of electrical engineers came in and introduced themselves and tried to DIY solutions to get everyone power. But it was quite a thing to get power out here. Some people ran generators, but not too many. Most people just relied on the fact that power would be intermittent. And then a couple of them also had solar panels. So in the future, I'm going to bring, I think, probably solar panels and a large battery for our individual camp stuff, because we really didn't use that much power. It was just the noodle and then the lights inside our camp, and that was just about it. But because so many other people were doing crazy stuff, it meant that it was a little harder to get power consistently. All right, so aside from the bubble machine, which, by the way, the kids went absolutely crazy for, there was a lot of stuff going on. So this was the night market, and this is where we got to trade a lot of those broken or lightly busted nuggets for all sorts of other random stuff, as I showed earlier. So it was a dome that then led into a whole bunch of tents that had all this interesting and cool stuff, a lot of blinky stuff, a lot of stickers, a lot of other things being traded for either sometimes real bucks, but often also what they called shady bucks. And you can see there was a lot of like projection mapping going on here as well. They really did an amazing job with making these tents look like super engaging and immersive. So while I feel like I made a pretty good showing with the shower curtain, like perhaps I could have done better, and I will do better next year. So this is the legendary drone taco delivery service. I think the procedure is it goes down and you have to take the taco out of it and then give them a thumbs up to let them know that it's been retrieved. Oh, you can see the drone gets pulled a little bit. There's the taco. You show it, everybody cheers, and then the drone goes away. Under the best of circumstances, this drone got trapped in a tree not long after this video, and everybody had to rescue it. And the rescue strategy was to fly a smaller drone into the tree repeatedly to chop it up and eventually crash the smaller drone into the larger drone, which caused them both to tumble out of the tree. I say that kind of deridingly, but it actually worked, so I can't argue with the results. When we came back from teaching our class, the kids had discovered our bubble machine and were going absolutely crazy. I've never seen kids be more excited. And they started putting their faces directly in front of the bubble machine and eating them. So we eventually told the parents that they could turn off the bubble machine whenever they wanted to. And when we left, this was the scene. When we came back, there was a 4-foot pile of bubbles and the bubble machine was exhausted. So I don't even... Oh, this is bureaucracy. Okay. So one of the things that's a hallmark of Toorcap is kind of like silly society. Like they basically make like versions of society that you have to do in order to interact with certain parts of the camp. So this was bureaucracy, and this is the equivalent of the DMV, the bureaucracy, where these people are filling out forms to get a tiny, teeny tiny little cup of beer after going through a whole application process to become citizens. So bureaucracy citizens have to go through a lot of paperwork, and that's kind of the point. But there was also things like Shady Bucks. So this is my Shady Bucks card. This is an actual debit card that you have to get embossed and set up, and it has digital currency on it. Cryptocurrency, some might say. So last camp, somebody figured out how to exploit this and created infinite Shady Bucks and ended up kind of cornering the economy. I don't think that they managed to this year, but they did warn us that that could happen. And you have to go to the ShadyTel carrier service in order to set this up. So there was phone service run to all the camps, so you could call anybody on like a rotary phone or like a normal plug-in phone. Was all connected via a phone service called ShadyTel. So these sorts of bureaucracies and like fake like telecoms or whatever that actually work was kind of cool. It was like a performance where people were emulating parts of real society, but in a way that was constantly failing. So the ShadyTel people were always fixing power failures, trying to find out why their equipment wasn't working, and trying to run a real phone network out in the middle of nowhere. And creating infrastructure from nothing, including Shady Bucks, was a pretty cool experience. This was one of the workshops that I got to teach. It was a hex leaf class where we put together these hex leaf lamps, although we also made a bunch of smart Pusheen cat lamps as well. But they all came out really well. The people who made them were extremely happy. This is a fun and low-cost project that I've been bringing to a bunch of different workshops. And if you have access to a 3D printer, I highly recommend this one. The way they came out was just awesome. When we got back, this was the scene. The bubble machine had run out of bubbles and created a massive pile of bubbles that the kids were throwing themselves into. The kids also had a stomachache because they kept eating bubbles. So we took the bubble machine offline for a while, and at night we saw people doing whatever this is. We saw like glow up kites. We saw a bunch of people spinning whatever that is, and then of course lots of bubbles. So this was another night in the night market. Of course, you can see my trademark noodles here, and people all over were trading things and had all sorts of cool and interesting stuff. So as somebody who works in marketing, I'm also very interested in how people are able to attract attention, what kind of stuff like shows up and does really well. So this was a bunch of resin cast stuff. All these were actually, you could learn how to make these resin cast things at workshops at the camp. So they had the finished result and then also the class that let you learn how to make them yourselves. We had a lot of glowy and blinky things. These ones were 3D printed and had some like blinky stuff integrated into them. And then just generally the night market was just, as you can see, a blinky bazaar where people were buying, trading, and selling, often not using real currency, which was totally fine. There was also some pop-up art installations. This was just a game you could play, this big egg just in a field. So not really much context there. Somebody just kept setting it up, and it had an uninterruptible power supply. So even if it got unplugged, the egg game just kept playing. What is this place? Yeah, so this is Toorcap. Is located in the San Juan Islands. It happens every 2 years, and it's a hacker camp that's styled after the C3 conference, Chaos Communication Congress in Germany, and also some of the camps out there in Europe as well, like EMF. These are very, very similar. They're basically a hacker conference, but with all the infrastructure removed, so you bring the infrastructure. It's pretty cool. It basically, oh yes, and then of course, one of the final manifestations of the Space Noodle, my personal project to allow drunk people stumbling back to their dark tents through the night to be able to navigate safely through the camp. So this was another one of our workshops, a solder your own hacking tool workshop. We got a lot of people who soldered for their very first time at this camp. And of course, there was a Pride parade as it was the last day of Pride, and a lot of furries. A good sign of health of a conference to see a bunch of furries. So I saw some of the best some of the best stickers I've seen. A lot of, again, gigantic bubbles. And then finally, we got the bubble machine up for one last hurrah before the kids flipped it over and shorted out the power for the entire camp. Somebody also made a stamp in a stamp making workshop of our nugget. So they gave us the stamp and then also the result from the stamp. It was super cute. So a lot of people really touched us while we were teaching, like either people that really enjoyed what they were learning, people who had learned to solder for the first time, or people that took our Wi-Fi self-defense class and really enjoyed it. After on the last day, there was a cool little dance party, and oh wow, they really clocked me on that last one. It was direct eye contact. And then we had to head back. So aside from having our cars not start on the ferry, it was a relatively uneventful trip home until we got to Seattle, where we got to see the Pride Parade and gay robots. Don't really know a lot of context behind these, but love to see the LGBT robots. These appear not to be battle bots. They are harmless basketball tossing bots. But either way, it was nice to see, after coming off the island, a continuation of all the cool, colorful nerds and electronics. So that was most of our trip to Toorcap. And again, if you haven't heard of it, I'm not really surprised. It isn't a very well promoted place, I would say. And when we first saw the camp, I was confused. I thought, like, okay, it didn't happen last year. Maybe it's not active anymore. But it turns out this is an extremely long running camp. It actually does have a lot of people that go to it very regularly. And the only reason that I thought it was dead was because it happens every other year. So I was like, okay, well, now I know. So if you're looking for a great place to check out, Toorcap is amazing. And I have to say, there were so many kids here and people with kids. So if you're a parent and you're looking for like a camp for your kids to go to that has a lot of just like delightful stuff, electronics, like blinky stuff, like, and even some cybersecurity things, we met some incredibly smart kids who the camp was basically made for. So I didn't expect this to be such a kid-friendly camp, but it really was. And teaching kids about cybersecurity and electronics was incredible. So also a big shout out for Veronis for letting me take the time to go to this camp. I love teaching people, and getting to do this outreach is honestly the best part of my job. So anyway, lots of questions. Let me dive into them. And of course, let me show off some of the comments that have been on accumulating all the stream while I've been gone. But first, they let kids there? Oh no, kids. Yes. So the kids definitely flipped over our bubble machine. They ate a lot of bubbles. They were a little bit rambunctious, but the kid made the camp. Honestly, like having people attend your class for the first time that have never soldered before and take to it like that, or who have like maybe done one or two things already and then are knowledgeable enough to really get something out of a more advanced class, was amazing. Like there's a lot, I don't know, I have a lot of hope for the next generation. Like there were a lot of really incredible kids that were brought there by their parents. And some of these kids also were, just brought there because their parents had been going for 8 or 10 years. And their parents knew that even if they weren't interested in the tech, it was still just a magical place. So yeah, like super kid-friendly camp. I didn't feel like doing any of the adult stuff I wanted to do was a problem, like staying up late, like going to campfires, cursing a little bit with friends, But yeah, like there was always spaces for adults as well. But probably the most kid-friendly camp I've seen, while still being very hacker, very punk, and very, very fun. So yeah, the next camp that's coming up is going to be Hope, and that's going to be in New York. Also super, super fun, a lot of amazing people. And again, kind of reminds me of the C3 conference, although this one is indoors at a university at St. John's University in Queens. So a lot of us are going to be going to that, and you'll see a lot of the same people who were at Toorcap at Hope. So if you're going there, please let me know. We can catch up, and it would be great to see some more people. I met a couple of people from either the live stream or my previous channels while I was at Toorcap, and one of them was Peter. So if you're watching, I turned our Space Noodle the colors of the Serbian flag at his request, and I think it worked out really well. So it was cool running into some of you there as well, and hopefully I'll be able to see people from the stream both at DEF CON and Black Hat and then at the upcoming Hope Conference. I would die from heat exhaustion dressed as a furry. It was incredible, the range of different furry costumes they had to accommodate all the different temperatures. When it was cold, the really furry ones. When it was hot, like the kind of like blended ones. It's a whole science that I'm only an amateur at. Let's see. All right. So let me and also, thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate that. Yeah, it wasn't live yesterday, but we did do some really cool cutouts of OSINT tools and other things that I've been publishing. So even though I've been at the camp, we've still been publishing some fun stuff to keep you guys entertained while I'm away. All right, so let's go ahead and show some of the comments that we have had on the channel. So I haven't been going through these as much as I usually do. First question is just, hi, I would like to know, when is the next live stream? Thanks. The next live stream is now. So I hope that was helpful, and I'm going to like and thumbs up this comment. All right, next up. 1Password freezes account. Bit flawed thinking on the open source comment. You're always at the provider's mercy when using online products, open source or not. This is a true comment. So we were talking about how 1Password has frozen the accounts for journalists that they used to give out. I, as somebody who trains journalists, was personally affected by this and seriously annoyed and covered it no less than 3 times as a result. A lot of people were calling out, hoping that there would be open source alternatives to this, and there absolutely are. However, the difference is if you're going to have an online solution or an offline solution. So an offline password manager means if you were to add a password on your phone, it might not show up on another device if all of those different databases are not synced somehow. So unless you're manually syncing them or have your own infrastructure, you're typically relying on a third-party provider. And if they go offline, like we saw happen with LastPass, I think like 2 weeks ago, then that can cause real problems. So 2 weeks ago, LastPass tried to implement a feature where they were adding like a, what were they adding? They were adding like a something to their Chrome extension, and it broke it so badly that people could not retrieve their passwords, even from their local vaults. That to me is amazing because I don't understand how that's even possible. But there are always downsides when you're connecting things via syncing. And of course, like the whole point of a password manager is it's convenient, right? So picking a good, so just for full disclosure, I am still riding on my completely frozen 1Password account that got frozen in the middle of the RSAC conference. That's how mad I am still about this. Like I refuse to pay them, and it's so annoying to export and go to another service. Like I'm just like paralyzed. But I really do think that, I mean, not for me personally necessarily, but for any of the journalists that were previously on their program, this encourages good security. It allows them to share passwords securely with their colleagues. It makes it super easy for them to basically like adopt practices that their newsroom might not be willing to fund or might not understand are important. So for journalist training, like I really appreciated that 1Password used to have a free account for journalists. Like that was their part of their commitment to making sure journalists had the right protections. But yeah, seeing them walk back on this was really sad. I'm not a fan of it. But there are always going to be trade-offs when it comes to like a cloud provider. So there are open source versions of this that do allow you to host your own. But then, of course, if your computer were to die or whatever computer is hosting this were to die, then you could get into some real trouble, especially then even if the computer that's hosting everything gets breached or you fail to update it, you're basically giving yourself a new task, maintaining the server that like has access to all your backups and stuff. So this is definitely a more complicated solution than simply picking an open source provider versus a closed source one. Other people say use KeePass. Yeah, I've actually heard that that is a good idea, and I'm gonna, you know what, and you get one too because that is a great comment, and I do believe you're correct. So another person just says use KeePass, and that's not a bad idea either. Yeah, I've heard Bitwarden and KeePass X are the two things that are most recommended. Export to Bitwarden. Yes. Now what's interesting is like most of these services, if they're going to allow you to sync. And basically they're providing cloud infrastructure will charge you about the same amount of money. 1Password is, in basically right in the middle of that. So even though some of these projects are open source, if you want to use the advanced features that allow the convenience of having everything backed up, they are basically taking on the responsibility of maintaining that, making sure it doesn't have any weaknesses, vulnerabilities, that it doesn't get breached. Hopefully they do a good job with that. But then you pay them for that, and that is almost universally the trade-off. I have not seen a free password manager that does offline syncing that I trust. So yeah, no, that was a really good point. But yes, also Bitwarden's good. Hopefully people didn't need to subscribe just to retrieve their password vaults. Yeah, so to be clear about what happens if you are a journalist and you have had your account frozen by 1Password, like me, I cannot infill any of my passwords, which means like I am much more now vulnerable to like clipboard stealers. So if someone were trying to steal my passwords from the clipboard, that means that because I have to copy and paste stuff, it's entirely likely that that could happen. Now, 1Password says that you should never do this and that you should only do automatic infill so that it's never in the clipboard, and that helps improve your security. However, they then went and disabled all these, vulnerable journalist accounts, forcing them to copy and paste their passwords. That doesn't sound like a good idea to me. It also means you cannot save any new passwords. Your account is basically frozen as is. You can still access it, and that was their mistake because I'm going to continue using this frozen 1Password account until I die. But it doesn't actually prevent you from accessing your vault like LastPass accidentally did 2 weeks ago. It merely makes the tool much less secure and much less useful. So nice try, 1Password, but I'm going to continue using this disabled business account because downgrading would mean basically eliminating any passwords that I've shared with anyone else. It no longer allows you to share with colleagues or anything like that. For me, that's a deal breaker because that's how I securely share passwords. Yeah, that's the business with 1Password. Thank you also for watching and subscribing to this. Perhaps if 1Password sees that security people are mentioning that maybe this isn't a great idea to downgrade like journalists, like there's other ways of doing this, then maybe they'll rethink it. So one comment we had on is your neighbor's video doorbell listening to you is in a one-party consent state, you cannot record your neighbor's conversation in their own house if they're not a party in the conversation. States need to crack down on this stuff in apartment complexes. So this is really valid, actually, because I've been seeing a lot of apartments built, at least in the Los Angeles area, that actually have these doorbells built in. And the fear here is that you have the ability to listen in on nearby conversations of people outside and maybe inside parts of their houses. And if you have a doorbell that can hear you when you're inside your own house and it's recording that information, maybe transcribing it and storing it, we've already seen that Amazon employees have basically unrestricted access to a lot of this stuff, and so does law enforcement. And a lot of that could be perceived as surveillance like information that's being gathered. So if all this information is being gathered and exists in all these places and can be gathered without your consent, that is an issue. And that's why we were talking about the fact that a lot of these video doorbells actually have incredible range when it comes to audio and can pick up conversations that they were never supposed to pick up. All right, so this is a funny comment, and we're running a little low on time on this one. This is a comment talking about geofence warrants. So geofence warrants are something where police will basically say, like, anybody that was in this area, I want you to tell me who was here. So they have no idea who was there, basically, and they want a list from a tech company like Google or Apple saying which ones, like which of their users had devices pinging in that area, and then whatever other associated account information they can provide. These are controversial because they are dragnet surveillance. You're basically just saying, like, okay, I'm going to pick this geographic area, and anybody whose device pinged within it, I want to know about. Typically, the law requires you to, like look for a specific person or have a warrant for a specific person's information. This is much more akin to the controversial Stingray data, where basically, like a Stingray device will capture a lot of different people's devices all at the same time, and then the data from all those devices goes through it. So this is unintentionally capturing information from completely innocent people and involving them in an investigation that they may not have any reason to be involved in. Dragnet surveillance. So again, a lot of people don't like this. That kind of surveillance is very controversial, but this person's opinion is techs have been using this since the dawn of time as a marketing tool, and now you are against it being used against criminals. Wow, how some people's priorities have gotten off track. And then someone else liked this. Come on, you guys. So like the reason why all of this data exists in the first place is because Google has been capturing it and Apple has been capturing it and using it to do marketing and other sorts of stuff. They are very hungry for data, and the fact that they maintain and retain the information about where people have been is, in and itself controversial. But having that involved in a law enforcement investigation and used as evidence is definitely something a step further. So obviously, like the point here, which I do think is valid, is that this information is already being hoovered up by these companies and then stored, sometimes indefinitely. So the fact that law enforcement is also getting a crack at it to solve crimes may not be the worst thing in the world, when further down the line, these companies are the reason this data exists in the first place because of their practices. Okay, not a bad point. Now that I say it out loud, that's a fair point. But I will say that turning tools that are designed for convenience into dragnet surveillance was probably never the intention of the people that created them, and making sure that people are not included in warrantless surveillance for no reason is definitely in the interest of privacy and just making sure we go after the right people. Like, investigating crimes is fine, but like involving a bunch of random people's data in those investigations without their permission is really the reason we have warrants. So dragnet surveillance often tests the limits of those warrants by capturing information about people who are not involved at all. And that's kind of the argument here, and definitely something that a lot of people have been maybe not super thrilled about seeing the expansion of that type of surveillance. All right. Also, hello, good to see you. So other questions. Oh, okay, cool. So James is mentioning that he received his CAN adapter from the Flipper a few days ago. That was 6 days ago. James, you're here. What happened? Have you tried it? So far, I tried the HDMI out, like gaming adapter for the for the flipper, but I have not actually done that. And I've also been recommended to try out the AI hat for the new Raspberry Pi. That's also on my list of accessories to try out. But I'm curious if you found it to be worth it or something that I should maybe cover on the stream. Seems interesting. A lot of people also were very familiar with the Flipper Zero at Toorcap. So obviously it's been around for such a long time now that like either a lot of people have them, have used them, are familiar with them, or are just over it because they are now looking for add-ons or extra stuff to do because they've exhausted all the things that they can do by default. Kind of interesting to see, like now that we're into a couple years of this device being out, like how far we've come and how people are reacting after they bought it for a while, and then maybe the excitement kind of wears off a little bit. Okay, let's see. What brand / types of cars are the most vulnerable to remote attacks? This is a really good question, and I think what why did I hide it? No. Okay. All right. Well, that question was a really good one, and here, oh, I hid you, James. I didn't mean to do that. Okay, there we go. So what brands / types of cars are the most vulnerable to remote attacks? So we talked about the fact that most cars, modern cars especially, have systems that are installed by default by the dealer or installed by the manufacturer, like OnStar and other things that are turned on by default and often have the ability to control remote features of the car. So when we're talking about like hacking a car or being vulnerable to remote attacks, like most of these attacks come from connected telematics that are available to be connected to by very, very weak authentication. We're talking about like the VIN of the car or like things like that allow you to connect to the car and do things like open the doors or make it do something remotely. So I would say like telematics and then cloud-based systems that are connected to cars by default are the most common thing you'll see nowadays. There's some like signal, like key card cloning and signal amplification and stuff. But those are all kind of like not exactly remote attacks. Truly remote attacks are going to go through the cloud. They're going to go through devices that are connected to the car and allow you to maybe perform emergency services or actions like unlocking the door and require, again, weak authentication or no 2FA. No 2FA means that they're probably going to be brutal to some some types of brute forcing. So some brute force tools will allow you to just go after a particular account, especially if there are exposed credentials that can give you some educated guesses on what the passwords could be based on or how they're formatted. So I would say if you want to hack a car, looking for online connected services is the way that we usually do it. And I will say there's a lot of cars that have been in the news for having these systems built in and having them be vulnerable. Honda is one of the ones that comes to mind as being a little bit notorious. And also like Kia and Hyundai have been in the news for being easy to steal and also have other vulnerabilities that allow you to like break into them relatively easily. But I've heard particularly interesting things about some of like Toyota, Honda, about how they don't really care about some of these bug reports. Like car manufacturers in particular have a bad reputation in the security industry for either not paying for or not fixing software bugs. So yeah, if you're looking for somewhere to not submit a bug bounty, these car manufacturers seem to be pretty slow when it comes to getting back to paying people or fixing the problems that are discovered. Okay, so that's just about all I have time for today. I've got to run a little bit early today. As I said, everybody wants to talk to me if I've been gone for a long time. So I've got to go make sure I have enough kits for a unrelated cyber workshop that's happening elsewhere. It's going to be a lot of counting, a lot of fun, but I will be back on Friday for our first news stream now for a while. And hopefully we'll have Killian on to help talk about news of the week. And there was also a interesting vulnerability that I helped write a blog post on that we posted earlier this week that I'm going to be talking about on Friday. So if you want to learn about the SSH vulnerability that everybody is talking about, which seems to be a regression from a vulnerability that was all the way back in 2006, then we're going to be talking about it at length on Friday. So tune in then. And of course, if you want to support the stream, you can always go to, we're done showing this screen. If you want to support the stream, you can always go to varonis.com/Kody. That's Kody. And that lets everyone here know that you appreciate the stream. You want us to keep doing it twice a week, every week that I'm not out of camp, and just keep it going. So thank you to everybody who joined us on the stream for today. It's wonderful to be back. And if a little bit late, hopefully we'll see some of you also at the upcoming Hope, Black Hat, and DEF CON conferences. It's going to be crazy, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of you there. All right, that's it, everyone. I will see you on Friday. Have a good one. Bye.